Welcome to this live stream. I am joined by my pals, Mohamed Ayash. You're supposed to say hi.
Oh, I was waiting for Jeremy. Okay, hi, Jeremy.
No,
I was waiting for the
no, no,
other
no. We're
Jeremy,
doing this in
but
order.
okay, we're in order. Okay, hi, Jeremy. Thanks so much, man. It's such a pleasure to be on with you here, and looking forward to it.
Yeah. And Jeremy Wildeman.
Hello, fellow Jeremy.
One of you guys are not wearing. Jeremy, you got put on some earphones. I can hear myself.
You can
Oh,
hear
now
yourself.
I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, put on the earphones if you have them handy. If not, whatever. It's a live stream.
Well, it's in my
We're here
ear.
to have
It's in my ear,
fun.
man.
Oh, it
My
is.
ear.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
You can't hear me? You can't hear me? Let me put on my.
Oh, I hear you great. I just heard myself. Anyways, I heard an echo. It's gone now.
Okay, let me try.
Maybe it
Is
was
it gone
just in
now?
my head. So these two gentlemen and scholars have a new podcast called DeCyphered, which I thought was quite clever, focusing on Middle East geopolitics. And, I'm a humble Alberta journalist. I'm not like one for geopolitics. I mean, I dabble. That's how we know each other. But it's not my field of expertise, right? I mean, you see, I got my kafia here on my computer chair. So I got solidarity. I'm into it. But these guys are experts. These are scholars on Middle Eastern geopolitics. And they have a new podcast out that I wanted to draw to your attention, focused on Middle Eastern geopolitics. So, Mohamed, Jeremy W. Tell me a bit about DeCyphered, sort of what you're trying to decipher, and sort of how you guys decided to start a podcast, because a lot of podcasts is the podcast is the new people are saying podcast is the new bison, actually.
Can I just say something first to start us off? Because you mentioned the name of the podcast, and I got to give credit here to my wife, Sarah Samuel. She came up with the title. Our first had the word unpack something or another in it, and she's like, no, you're not going to use unpack. That's too academic and it's too boring, and no, not gonna happen. And so she actually was the one that came up with the DeCyphered.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, Jeremy can also fill in here, but like essentially, we were
Jeremy too.
yeah, Jeremy W.
Let's just call him Wildeman.
Wildeman. Yeah, we've done a few talks on our co-edited book on Canada as a settler colony and the question of Palestine, and we had spoken at a few different universities, and we don't really do the very boring academic talks. I mean, my brother will tell you otherwise, but but we're not as boring as other academics. So we had a couple of people mention to us that's like, oh, you guys should do a podcast, and that's kind of how the seeds of the idea started. And we thought that there was very little, if nothing, in Canada about geopolitics. So that's kind of the initial where the initial idea came from, and we wanted it to be a podcast where you can just have raw, honest analysis of geopolitics without getting into all the propaganda and spending so much time unpacking. I just used the word deciphering propaganda. I know, such an academic, but it's not so much to continuously say, oh, they're wrong with the propaganda. We know they're full of shit in their propaganda, so let's just decipher it and get to the raw, honest reality on the ground, and hopefully give Canadians a view that they don't ever get from mainstream media or mainstream politicians, with a few exceptions here and there.
So you're not doing the debunking. You're not you're focused, like, let's just talk about like the cold hard facts in the reality.
Yeah, and there'll always be an element of debunking in that a little bit, but just kind of want to get to it right away, as opposed to spend the whole time is like, is Iran a terrorist or is the IRGC a terrorist organization? Like, that's a stupid question to start a conversation with, honestly. So just kind of get into it. So like in the very first one, it's like, just to give you an example, is like, instead of going on about Iran and nuclear weapons and all that, just kind of get into it. Is like, why do they like, nobody asks in mainstream discourse, like, why would they actually want one? It's because it's not, by the way, to just blow up the whole world with it. Like, they wouldn't do that. That makes no sense. And they are rational actors, despite all the bullshit you hear about them. So like, why did they want it in the first place? Let's get into that. So that's the kind of questions and analysis that we want to sort of highlight.
Big shout out to Stacey Vaughn. Stacey Vaughn, of all people. Stacey Vaughn really recommended when we were on after a book talk in Mount Allison in Sackville, New Brunswick. Nobody's been in Sackville practically, unless you studied in Mount Allison. And she was saying to us after a book launch, Canada's settler colony, the question of Palestine, that we were out there for. She said, at University of Alberta Press, great press in Edmonton. She said, you and Mohamed should have a podcast. And she actually makes her living off of online media. So, and she was an inspiration about 1 year ago in the spring, about a year before we started this. But basically a year later, I was like, Mohamed, we got to do it. We got to do this podcast. We spoke to some friends, some great advisors on the committee. I don't know if we can mention one of them because of his role. Another one, Adil Iskander, professor at SFU, that we also did a book launch with in Vancouver in November 2023. Really thought we should go ahead with this. And what he felt was, we need to fill this space with people in Canada talking about international relations, talking about the Middle East. And I think, Mohamed, you're right. It's not even like pure and passive bullshit. The whole corporate media in Canada, Jeremy, it's why you're not in the corporate media. It is terrible. It's one of the most concentrated media markets in the Western world. And when it comes to the Middle East, you're not, man, I've been a Middle East scholar for decades now, basically, and you cannot use the Canadian media for anything other than see, is there anything changing in Canada? And I will say that CTV, there's a little bit of change, but it's not. You also, outside of a podcast, you can't really get in depth talking about anything. You can't really explore what the issues are. So we'll have like 30 minutes with a brilliant academic like Azar Masumi talk about what is really the situation in Iran politically, what is the real human rights situation. That's our recent podcast. Sami Hermes, what he told us 2 weeks ago about Lebanon is holding still to this day about what would happen in Lebanon with Israel and Lebanon. We're looking forward to exploring this further and further with more and more specialists that we know, but with a Canadian angle. There's almost nothing like this in Canada. The U.S. is full of these rich podcasts about international relations. Nothing in Canada that we're really familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I listened to the first episode that you just mentioned, and it was great analysis of what's going on in Lebanon. Your second episode, I haven't had a chance to listen to yet, but it's about Iran, and of course, there's a close connection to what's happening in Iran and what's happening in Lebanon. But maybe to start the real meaty geopolitical conversation that I brought you on to have. Let's talk about Iran. What's the situation there? I know there are these negotiations that are going back and forth. The Strait of Hormuz, I don't have a car, so I don't notice it as much as others. Still blockaded. In the U.S. are doing a blockade on top of Iran's blockade.
And then Iran blockaded the blockade of the blockade recently.
Oh, shit. It's like a referendums in Alberta, right? We're having a referendum. For my Alberta listeners, I
Yeah, I don't know. Jeremy, do you want to give a little rundown first, or?
You know what, Mohamed, you do it, because I think I'm going to follow something that's a little bit current today. Maybe you didn't see. So let you go first, and I'll shock you.
All right. Okay. So, by the way, Jeremy, the host, it's not just the gas prices. It's going to show up in your air travel. It already is. It's going to show up in your food prices. Wait till the fall hits. I mean, that's what the experts on this are saying. You know, I'm not in the food sector.
The food professor.
Yeah, that's right. You got to find yourself a good food professor, and they'll tell you that in the fall is where you're most likely going to see the spike in food prices, because that's how long it's going to take for that market to be sort of showing those signs that farmers, for example, are feeling right now in their higher costs of producing things. So everybody's going to feel it. And there's countries around the world right now that are feeling it way more already, like especially poorer countries, right? Somalia, for instance, right? Southeast Asia, many countries in Southeast Asia are already suffering greatly. And essentially, just to kind of simplify everything, Netanyahu manipulated Trump. He didn't manipulate the U.S. He didn't create interest for the U.S. where there is none, or he didn't convince them that it was in their interest to do this where they previously did not think that it was in their interest. That's not true. The U.S. is an empire. Their interests have always been they prefer a vassal state in Iran, like they have vassal states, for example, in the UAE. They prefer much more like that, so that they can control the global energy markets, right? Like that's the U.S. empire's main interest is global energy markets, not just the resource, but global markets in general. Because just think about it this way: look at how much Iran can hurt the whole world right now with just the Strait of Hormuz. If the U.S. has control of that much more oil in that region, think about how much pain they can inflict on a superpower rival, right? That's essentially what it is, right? So the U.S. has always wanted a regime change in Iran. But the reason why none of the U.S. administrations prior to Trump went for it with the Israelis is because they were like, it's not going to work. It's essentially just not. I wish we could do it, but it's not going to work. It's going to be too difficult. They're too entrenched. This is a proud civilization. This is a government that is not stupid. They're not. You're not going to be able to just completely get rid of them, et cetera, et cetera. And Netanyahu has always, been able to manipulate Trump and Trump's ego very well, better than most. He's not the only one, by the way, but he's better than most. And he managed to sell him, on this whole idea. You're going to be this great leader in history, and trust me, it'll be, it won't be as hard as some of these naysayers are telling you it's going to be. We're so powerful. Look at what we're doing everywhere in the Middle East, and nobody stands in our way. We're so strong, et cetera, et cetera. He sold them on all that. And that's how he manipulated Trump to get into this. And of course, the Israelis' reason for wanting not regime change in Iran, they want state collapse in Iran, because Iran is the last state in the region that still opposes them. Everybody else is too cowardly, or has joined them to resist them.
Or like non-state actors, right? Like Hezbollah.
So there are non-state actors, but yeah, we're talking about states. States will always fear other states more than they fear non-state actors. You'll hear a lot of hysteria about non-state actors, but ultimately states don't fear them as in like they can bring them down, unless you have a weak state, right? A state like Israel, with all of its military might, is not afraid that a non-state actor is going to bring it down. It can't. A weak state like Iraq would fear ISIL, right? Like they if it wasn't for the U.S. coming in, they would have taken it down, right? But Israel, the U.S., Canada, there's always a lot of talk about non-state actors, but they're not going to actually bring down the state. But another state could. And not now, but maybe in the future, right? Like, so Israel has always wanted Iran gone so that they can eliminate all state support for Palestine, so that they can just go on and get rid of the Palestinians once and for all, call it all Israel, and it's over. Nobody stands up for the Palestinians. Everybody moves on. That's their fantasy. That will never happen. But that's still their fantasy, and that's why they want a collapsed state in Iran. So they can't bring down Iran on their own. So they manipulated Trump to go in it with them. Trump goes in and he thinks this is going to be easy and it'll all work out. I just want to say this. I remember maybe a week or so into the war, Tucker Carlson did say, I think it was on Piers Morgan.
Friend of the show.
But he did say, this is a person that talks to Trump. He did say when Piers Morgan goes like, "What have you told Trump not to do
You
this?"
love Piers.
I know. I don't love him, but I am addicted to watching his show a little bit. I just
It's
admit
like
that.
me with
Damn it.
Berta Proud Dad.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so he Piers goes like, "Did you tell him this is going to be a disaster? Don't do it." And he said yes. And he goes, "Well, what did Trump say?" He goes, "It'll all work out." And we know now that for sure that's what Trump told him, because Trump now is saying that publicly. He tweeted it out the other day. The White House tweeted it out as his quote, "It'll all work out," because it always does.
Yeah. And then Tucker asked him, what do you mean it's going to all work out? I just explained the Strait of Hormuz to you.
Yeah.
And Trump was like, it always does.
This is,
Which is like for him.
This is your friend in your life who's a complete mess, and they're really drunk, and you're trying to talk sense to them and be like, you got to take hold of all of this mess in your life. And they're like, yeah, it'll all work out. Just get me another drink. It'll all work out. That's Trump's strategy in Iran. It's a fucking disaster, man. So Iran is actually really smart. And they're very rational, and they have exhibited and like shown an ability in this war to do things that really surprised a lot of people. I'm not just talking about surprised their enemies. It surprised their friends. It probably surprised themselves even. Like, let me just put it to you this way: like in war, this is not just this war. In any war, you have a strategy, you have a set of tactics to try and reach your strategy. First of all, you got to make sure that tactics and strategies fit well to each other, and then the right ones. That's not easy to do. They're basing their tactics and strategies on literally, 30, 40 years of study, like close study of the Vietnam War, of the war in Iraq, between them and Iraq, and then between the American invasion of Iraq, and many other cases. They've studied them so closely. Number one. So they come up with that. Okay, great. Now you got to actually operationalize that strategy and stick to it in the midst of war that you're facing existential threat, a real existential threat. I'm not talking about the fake existential threat that you hear from the Israelis and so on, but like a real existential threat here. There's so much emotion and pressure in that situation. To actually stick to your strategy is super hard. And the strategy was risky. To attack all the Arab countries around you, it's so risky. I don't think people appreciate how risky of a move that is. And to do it continuously and stick to it, knowing that you're right and it's going to work, it's so hard to do, and it has worked. So they have put the U.S. and Israel in such an impossible position by strangling the Strait of Hormuz and hurting the global economy. They know they can't fight them militarily, although they can cause them a lot of damage if they try to invade with ground troops. But they know they can't ultimately win that. The ultimate way to put pain on the Americans is through economics. And you know what? They were like, we're not going to just put the pain on the Americans. We're going to put it on everyone. The whole world is going to feel this, and the whole world is going to now knock on the Americans' door and say, stop this shit. What the fuck have you done to me? My economy is collapsing. Europe is in complete panic. The Arab states are like, what the hell? We thought we had a security with you that was going to prevent this, and now we're like, there's like real existential worry if they take out our salination plants and so on. So they actually generated enormous pressure on a lot of the allies of the U.S. to put pressure on the Americans, in addition to putting pressure on American people, ordinary people, with gas prices and food and so on. So the Iranians are suffering a lot. Don't get this misunderstood. They're suffering enormously, especially economically. But they have shown that their threshold for pain is way higher than the Americans. So they know what they have to do is just outlast the Americans' threshold for pain. And they can do that. So the Americans are stuck. They can't escalate. If they escalate, Iran will just take out the salination plants, destroys the Gulf, and the global economy will take years to recover. It's not a move that they can make. So the reason we're waiting out right now is because the Americans, Trump is still saying unconditional surrender like an idiot. Like, again, your drunk friend.
You don't have any cards.
Yeah, he's got nothing.
As he told, as JD Vance told Zelensky.
That's right. That's right.
But the Trump is getting advice from like the FDD, the something democracy, blah blah, Federation for something democracy.
Who, by the way, sorry, and Jeremy, you can take over from here. But that by the way, that idea came from the Freedom of Democracy, which is like a pro-Israel think tank and neocon for democracy. Extreme neoconservatives, pro-Israel, like crazies. They're the ones that gave him the idea of the blockade of the blockade.
Weren't they funded by the UAE at one point?
No, the UAE are they're neocons and
it's just the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. I mean, the UAE, whatever. Liberal democracy isn't for everyone. I mean, I don't even think it's for us. But like, if you're going to call yourself Foundation for Defense of Democracies, even if your idea of democracy is so expansive to include a genocidal apartheid state like Israel, you might not want like an autocratic, theocratic state giving you money. So
who are we talking about? I'm mixing it up right now.
Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
Who's the autocratic?
They took funding from the because they had a big thing on their website about how they do not take funding from the UAE, which means they took funding.
It's all the same nexus of people. They're all so like the leaders in this war, right, are the UAE and Israel and the United States. They want.
Sorry, sir. I wouldn't call the UAE leaders of anything. They're the vassal followers.
We'll get into that shortly. We'll get into that.
That's drunk is drunken and he's spending all the money on alcohol. He's like giving the money to buy the alcohol.
Yeah, but I want.
They're the loser friend. They're the loser friend who the drunk friend is like, I don't like you, but give me your money.
Yeah, exactly.
To spend on Israel, the beautiful friend.
But I wanted to ask though about these negotiations that are going back and forth. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Trump's like Middle East guys,
real estate agent. His real estate agent.
Yeah, because he's a deal maker, and it's the art of the deal, and he's dispatching other deal makers to make deals. And actually, Mohammed, you said about how Netanyahu has been, sort of expertly manipulating Trump. And it reminded me, today I was listening to the most recent episode of Chapo Trap House, and they had Jeremy Scahill and Ryan Grimm on from Dropsite News, who, cover these issues closely and know a lot about it. And one of them was saying how the Iranians were like getting a psychologist to help them with negotiations with Trump because Trump is so like demented at this point that they need a psychologist to like sort of figure out how to negotiate.
It's not just them, Jeremy. Like these are sophisticated states that the United States take on. So we got these clowns like the FDD who are creating this like cardboard villain from the 1980s, like image of Iran, of Russia, of China. These are sophisticated states. Iran has a very sophisticated society, university system, education system. We're seeing like all of these leaders have like PhDs in the social sciences and English literature and stuff, and they're actually quite good, by the way, with their PhDs, as opposed to our reality TV stars that are in charge in the West. And it's not just them, like China. China has whole think tanks looking at what is Trump's mood, what is he thinking, and they're analyzing like what is the cognitive decline, what is the narcissistic personality disorder, how do you deal with them. The Iranians have no time for Trump. They have no time for his real estate agents he keeps sending off to the Middle East. They really don't take them seriously. They don't trust them. Nobody trusts the United States, but they are more clever than, let's say, the elbows up guy that's in charge of Canada. You don't trust the United States right now under this government. They are not good for their word. You've seen that like every time the Iranians go to peace talks, the United States attacks them. Every time Witkoff and Kushner are like talking about peace, suddenly the peace negotiators are killed, right? So this is like this is the 80s villain, right? Like,
well, that's killed by the Israelis, right?
Or the Americans. You know what, they're so
sometimes the Americans are in with them too.
You don't know what's going on. It's like Marco Rubio. Well, we had attacks. Israelis are going to attack, but you don't know who's doing what at this point.
Well, because it seems to me that in Mohammed, you alluded to this, and I think we've talked about it before. That the Americans just want to do what they did in Venezuela, which obviously doesn't apply to a country as like massive as Iran, where just take out the guy at the top and then put someone in, and they know that the U.S. means business, right? Like mafia tactics, right?
Well,
That is still
Trump was going to go to China with the heads of Maduro and Khomeini and say, throw them down on the ground and look, China, we have your oil. But this is where China is also screwing everything up. You know why petrol, oil, gasoline, whatever you want to call it, is so relatively cheap right now? It's like $1.70 a liter right now in Ottawa, getting close to what it was prior to the war. China importing 40% less crude oil right now than it was in the past. And now everybody today is asking, what's going on? FT, Financial Times, like, why is China importing less oil? Now we all have to wonder, what are they that much more advanced in renewable energy right now that they're not importing oil? They've actually been releasing strategic oil reserves in East Asia. And we talk about Europe. Who cares about Europe, you guys? Nobody cares about Europe right now. When it comes to negotiations, yes, because they were all proved to be like, they're always with the United States. Today, Germany lost, like Canada, rightfully so. It's bid on a Security Council vote. Beautifully, Baerbock, one of the leaders of the genocide in Gaza, had to announce that Germany did not get this seat, like Canada, because of the injustices it's supporting the world, because it's supporting a genocide, it's supporting war. It's supporting war against Iran. It's saying that Israel's doing our dirty work in Iran. Right now, Europe doesn't matter, but Asia matters. These are real economies. South Korea, man, if you're watching the politics on Israel, they are feuding with Israel like mad. And if you're in the United States, who's more important? The country of South Korea, really one of the richest countries in the world, one of the top trade partners of the United States, or Israel, that borrows money left and right in order to fight wars in the Middle East. Asia is being lost over this conflict. And China right now is actually looking like a stabilizing force. They're operating under a so-called rules-based order. They look like they're more of a stable investment to put your money into. Not quite there yet. People prefer putting the money to gold than U.S. treasuries right now. Everybody's leaving Dubai for Singapore, but Hong Kong is China. There's a radical shift taking place right now. The multipolar world is here. The United States ran into Iran. They thought they would conquer it like nothing, take Iran, maybe Alberta later, by the way, Greenland. They would have all the oil, and then they can say, hey, guys, we're in charge of the world. So, Mondo, you're talking about that 30%? Like, Iran is sitting on like 20 to 30% of the energy reserves if you count the Gulf. Throw in Alberta, throw in Venezuela. What if you manage to take out the Russians, right? This is the goal. This is like the ultimate goal. It's and they're failing. They're failing. The Iranians have stopped them in their tracks. And everybody who really studied the Middle East, they're watching all the United States war games going back to the 2000s when Iran was not that advanced technologically. Right now, it's an advanced missile and drone state, not in the traditional air warfare, but the new air warfare that matters, drones and missiles. They're advanced. And even in the 2000s when they weren't, every war game, any U.S. general or admiral that would play around would defeat the United States at war. And it gets worse and worse with time. And they went in because Trump was like, yeah, I can do this. And who knows what other factors like Epstein and stuff are involved in this, right? But Trump was the dupe clown that went to war with Iran. And Netanyahu got his dream. Let's go to war with Iran. And they're already talking about Turkey, but
by the way, Netanyahu obviously is way smarter than anything Trump has ever been in his entire life, and much more calculating,
we're
seasoned
big fans
politician.
of him.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I will say this: he's also has made major miscalculations the last 2 to 3 years. And I'm not talking about his political career. I couldn't give you a damn about that.
He's going to win their election, though, right?
I don't know.
Probably,
I don't know, actually.
Or
I'm
someone
actually not
who's
sure.
worse.
Exactly. It's going to be Bennett if it's not him, and Bennett is worse. So, but listen, to me, with Netanyahu, I mean, the fact that he took so you took the Americans into this. The Israelis were banking on state collapse still. Like that was the only way, because they have played all of their cards to get the Americans in. And look at these polls today. I mean, everybody fucking hates Israel. And so their reputation, political capital, cultural capital is steadily decreasing like crazy. And so they've paid all that, and they're going to come out of it at the end without that state collapse they were wanting. That's an absolute strategic defeat for Netanyahu. So even though he manipulated Trump into this is going to be a strategic defeat for both in the long term.
But right now, the Israelis kind of have Iran relatively out of the game in their mind. The United States is still checkmating so-called Iran. They're not firing on each other right now. Israel took incredible damage. We don't know what the damage was because of the censorship regime. But for now, like the United States, for now, for the Israelis, maybe it's okay if the United States and Iran are sitting off like this. And by the way, we're all suffering. And I think the United States right now feel is like, well, let's starve the Iranians into submission. And the Iranians, on the other hand, are like, you know what? We've been through 47 years of sanctions. Let's do the same. So now everybody is suffering in the background. And for the Israeli side, they're kind of like, fine, because they'll still get bailouts from the West.
Yeah, but it's still in the long term, it's a strategic defeat if they don't get the state collapse. When this ends, this state is exactly where it was, and in fact stronger, and a bigger geopolitical player. In fact, at the end of it, then that is an absolute strategic. It's a strategic defeat for Israel. So
it's already stronger. It's already the fourth great power. I agree with Robert Pape about this. He says for the first time we've seen a great power emerge before us. It's not as powerful as Russia, not as powerful as China, not as powerful as the United States. Sorry, I should say the United States because China's more powerful than the United States probably right now in real terms. But
what about India?
India doesn't matter compared to Iran right now. Pakistan is the one who's negotiating everything right now. Like Pakistan has got the Chinese tech that's knocking the French jets that the Indians bought out of the air. So India is important. Don't count me. But because Modi's so compromised, he's so just like pro U.S. and Israel that he's not following the independent foreign policy that India depends on. Typically, in the past, India and Iran were good allies, and India would rely on Iran.
Right, non-aligned.
Right now, India's in serious trouble. And it looks like
sorry, finish that thought.
The BRIC. India looks like the unreliable actor for the BRIC. Nobody's going to go to war with them, but they're like, yeah, you know what? We know you're with the Israelis and you're with the U.S. and you're against us, and they just do not matter right now because of this issue. Because of this war. Because they look so biased.
I'm not an expert on India, but from my view of it, is that they made the wrong. So they made the pragmatic decision to get closer to Israel and the U.S., but they did it, from my understanding, based on pragmatic needs. Now, that's in itself is not that different from China. China has workings with the Israelis. It has trade relations with the Israelis. It has obviously huge trade relations with the Americans. So on the face of it, it's not that different. Where India went different than China is to go ideologically all in that kind of building that relationship, especially with Modi, because being so buddy with Netanyahu, and so on. Now, you still, even while that was going on, you still heard analysts from India saying it's still pragmatic. It's still not really all that ideological. Like it's not, or the ideology at least is surface level. Now, the problem is for India, whether it is true or not, that analysis, the perception out there is that India is ideologically now closer to the U.S. and Israel, and therefore cannot be trusted by others who are making pragmatic deals with those countries, but still view them as adversaries, if not enemies. So if you're in that boat like China, then you're looking at India and going, I don't think they're like me, and therefore I can't trust them. I can't have real conversations with them because I think they're going to go and tell everything to the Americans, and so on and so forth. So, and now when India gets screwed over by the Americans, surprise, surprise, they got nowhere to turn to, and they're having troubles right now sort of readjusting their position in this global geopolitical game, because they have less and less trust in their reliance on the Americans, but they also have to do some serious work to rebuild relations with BRICS and others. So they're kind of in a little bit of in no man's land, but they're not big players on the stage right now. In fact, Pakistan is moving in to fill in that space from that region, certainly with this negotiations.
Well, Russia was their traditional ally always, and so they started making the shift. I'm going to disagree with you, Mohammed. I think India has made major mistakes, and there are criticisms internally, and there's a lot of questions. Why is Modi so close to Israel? Why is Modi so close to the United States? What do they get out of this relationship? Everybody kind of realizes you're not, as India, you're going to be screwed, right? And they have been screwed already, right? Like the Russians are like holding them over the fire when it comes to oil prices, because they're like, well, we're not really relying on you, so you get the normal prices, not the discounted price anymore. Modi was in Israel right before the war started. It was like all clear, like he knew it was going to go on. He's been getting close to the UAE. The real questions are they some world leaders like Starmer, Trump, Modi. Why are you so close to Israel? Why are you burning your countries to be so close to Israel?
Is Modi in the Epstein files?
Well, that's a big question. So like the real critics in India are wondering this. And in India, there's serious crisis right now because Modi is basically like an Orban, like a Netanyahu, a Trump.
Yeah,
everybody who's younger
Danielle
has
Smith.
no future. It's a fascist state. People are in a semi-fascist state. People, they're being led down. Muslims are bad, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, the economy's not getting better. Rich people like Adani in the background are getting richer. People who have cross relationships, investment relationships with Israel. Modi's like this pawn in this game, but he's been screwing India because India used to always be like this neutral middle power, this mediator in the middle. Pakistan is still, by the way, the generals, like they don't. If Khan was there, they would be with Palestine already. They would be with Iran. The generals are still kind of owned by the U.S., but Pakistan is also kind of owned by China to some extent. Like technologically, more and more they're moving towards China. And so they're a little bit more advantaged right now. Still, the Iranians see them as like kind of representing the United States in negotiations. They're not totally neutral. It's not like China. China is like really, if the Chinese are setting up something, this is more neutral. India, it's a non-factor in the world. It's like Canada. Canada is a non-factor in the world, despite the Davos speech that Mark Carney did, because Canada immediately supported the war in Iran, because Canada has been supporting all these like unjust wars, still supporting like Israel and Gaza. It's a non-factor in international relations. India, 1.4 billion people, still a relatively important country in the world, like manufacturing, economy. It's a non-factor, and that's because of Modi and because of the war in Iran. And they don't have fuel; their economy is suffering.
Yeah, and so is this? Here's one. Here's the question. Epstein. Is this, to what the extent is this the Epstein war?
To great extent, yeah. But we don't know. Nobody really knows the background. But we got to look at this as elite capture, elites working together. The joke was, right, at some point that Trump would release the Epstein files to make us forget about the Iran war. I think Trump is fine with this. So something to remember in the background too right now. We've seen this in our lifetimes, right? Like 2008 financial crisis, COVID. If there's a financial crisis, what happens is probably the rich people get bailed out, stock market, which is the wealthier people. And who owns assets? They own assets. So if there's a collapse right now because of the Strait on Hormuz, maybe the Red Sea gets shut down by Iran as well. This is a fight in the region, but maybe the wealthy on the outside are like, hey, you know what? We have assets. Your currency is devaluing. We can buy up everything by leveraging our assets to buy currency and then buy more of your distressed assets, your houses. Maybe Canada's in a housing bubble. Maybe everything collapses. People start buying up from Qatar and from UAE and all the housing in Canada, BlackRock, whatever. So there's some real advantages for the ultra elite right now to pursue this, and Trump is one of them. Trump is representing them. So actually for him, maybe, you know what, Hormuz collapses, no problem. His base might be a problem. We see the independents have left him. But does that matter right now? He's got only a couple of years left in the presidency. He seems not to care about the midterms anymore. The Iranians want him to lose in the midterms. I think the Iranians want to keep this going to the midterms. For them, he is an enemy. They got to get
right, because the Democrats are funded by Iran.
Well,
right.
Well, yeah. I think Jeremy. But the Democrats are going to pursue the war in Iran. They support it, right? That's why there's no War Measures Act. They're like, well, yeah, we are not going to vote on this, and they keep preventing it because John Fetterman gets in the way, or the parliamentarian it used to be when it came to raising the minimum wage. In the end, they don't disagree with this course. Chuck Schumer, what Trump's doing, what does he have to disagree with it, right? Gottheimer, the same thing. They're very much on board with this war in Iran. The only difference is they might, if they get a big enough majority, they might prosecute Trump for corruption. I don't know, because if you do that and if you chase Trump out, you get J.D. Vance in power. J.D. Vance is more competent than probably most Democrats that are going to face. Don't have to like him. He's competent, right? And he could win the election. He could turn things around for Republicans. So in some way, for the Democrats, there's an interest in keeping Trump in power as lame duck. For the Iranians, they might want to get rid of Trump. folks, what I'm going to say to you is probably we have a Trump-length war going ahead. Like it's hard to see this ending beforehand. We'll talk about peace negotiations. Jared Kushner, Witkoff, Rubio. Rubio stays away from this. He wants to run for president, by the way. So he's like, no, maybe I'll do the
Lil
invasion of
Marco.
Cuba. But he's the favorite right now. Like Trump, MAGA right now is morphed into neoconservatism, right? The America First guys are off with your friend of the show, Tucker Carlson, and Thomas Massey, who has been clearly calling Gaza genocide and clearly opposes it, and opposes the war in the Middle East. Tucker Carlson he's actually dissected the challenges. He's dissected how language with Anna Kasparian leads to genocide, and he's connected genocide in Gaza to the Holocaust and to Rwanda. So this is the world we're living in right now.
Okay, let me. Sorry. Oh, before we get to another question about Tucker, but I just want to go back to the Epstein one very quickly.
Not a friend of the show.
No, it shouldn't be a friend of anyone. Okay, so
I'm not in the emails. Nowhere in the emails.
I'll tell you what. Like, if you're comfortable saying release all the emails, it means you're not in the emails. So I am all for releasing all the emails, and fuck Chomsky for being in them.
He's a liberal, anyways. He's a Democrat.
God.
He's an anarchist, and
I don't care. I don't care. No, he's a piece of shit, is what he is. But now that I know that he was with him, yeah, whatever. Okay, so I just want to answer one thing. Okay, because one thing you do here is like they went to war to distract from Epstein files, right? Like, no, I'm sorry. Like that may be part of a conversation that happens afterwards, but wars don't start for those kinds of reasons. The conditions for war preceded the birth of Epstein. Like I don't know what year he was born in, but like
he was probably born before the Iranian Revolution.
Before whatever. Before he was,
he made his money off the Iranian Revolution. Oh, the Iranian aftermath. He ran
aftermath. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, before he was a thing,
he involved with the Resnicks and like their pistachio business.
Probably we can't say, but with Les Wexner, right? And I would wonder, did Les Wexner get more money because of his relationship to Epstein and then the covert ops in Iran and the Iran Contra, or who made more money on that relationship, and why is it so weird?
But listen, so okay, I just wanted to finish this thought. Okay, so that's not the thing. But what is a thing is that there are these elite circles. Like that's a real thing. We knew that before Epstein. It's not like Epstein is like the first elite circles.
Sounds a little Semitic to me.
Oh boy.
So your circles of friends.
Let's be clear. It's not only
that was so. Oh my god. Sorry, finish Mohammed, and then I have some left.
Elites don't mean Jews. But anyway.
Oh, you're saying Jews can't be elites?
Oh, good God. Anyway, we're not about economic elites. Economic elites, pulling strings behind closed doors, hiding from you all their secret meetings and their schemes, doing illegal things like, child sex rings and torture and things like these are all real things, and they've been real things for a very long time, unfortunately. It's these forces that are behind the scene as well today. With Epstein dead, it doesn't matter. Like some other people are still there in that space, manipulating policy decisions that end up driving people to war or countries to war, causing enormous harm and damage to ordinary people. For the benefit of those elites. That's a real thing. Like that to me is the real part of the Epstein part of this story. So when I hear someone say the Epstein class, of course that's open to so many interpretations, and people who use it in the media know that it's open to many interpretations. But to me, the accurate interpretation of when people say this is the Epstein class, the Epstein war, is to say that this is a war of elites, of economic elites,
predatory elites,
who are making enormous money from death and destruction of people. And guess what? Like, is it a surprise to you then that those people would have such a a view of human life that it's meaningless and can be taken for their own desires or for their own satisfaction? Of course not. Just like they do that on Epstein Island to underage girls and boys, they do that to the thousands upon hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and Lebanese and Iranians, and they don't give two shits. Like Trump already said, I don't care about the economic impact on ordinary Americans. They don't give a shit about that. They don't give a shit about people. They don't. So that class exists. It existed before Epstein. It exists today, and it will continue to exist unless we as a people rise up against them. But so in that sense, yes, it's part of the Epstein class, Epstein war, but only in that general sense, not to me in that kind of oh, he did it just to hide the Epstein files. He was already hiding the Epstein files. He didn't need a war to do that.
It's a metaphor more than anything.
Yeah.
Of course, you mentioned the line "Let the Epstein class fight the Epstein war." Wab Kinew, Premier of Manitoba, said that at the federal NDP convention in Winnipeg. I was there, and it killed. That line killed, and then all of a sudden, all like Jason Kenney was like, the Premier of Manitoba is spreading Iranian propaganda, which is okay, Jason. And Selena Robinson, I thought had the funniest reaction. Disgraced former advanced education minister in BC. One of the only people I'm aware of that actually saw consequences for being an anti-Palestinian bigot. Jumped on Twitter and was like, this coded reference to Jews is unacceptable. And it's like, why, when you hear someone say Epstein class, the first thing you think is Jews? Like, what does that say about you?
Right.
Like, I think she might be dealing with some internalized anti-Semitism. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but I do enjoy psychologizing and pretending to be. It's quite fun.
What if it's Robinson's Island? Robinson's Island, what would that mean? Like, there's some weird...
Robinson Crusoe?
As soon as you hear Stein or man, it's like, this is like a... it's a weird way of looking at the world. Like, it's very Manichaean. Like, it's us versus them, and everything against us and everything against them. It's a sick mind. Right. So it's sick mind is what it is. Sick mind.
Yeah, it's twisted.
I do this Robinson Crusoe's Island. That's what's kind of like making them there.
Who was not a sex trafficker. I actually haven't read.
No, but by the way, that can be read. That can be read in a very colonial way too. But that's for another day.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, like I've read Orientalism. I
right.
I know the how literature created the
and
intellectual justification.
By the way, in a speech one time to a bunch of Europeans, Herzl used the imagery of Robinson Crusoe's island to give them the sense of like that's what the Zionist project is doing in Palestine. It's creating civilization out of nothing. Yeah. There's nobody. It's empty. Yeah. It's also empty.
Great analogy.
Yeah.
Great analogy, Ted. That's what I call him.
Teddy, as you like.
But back to your Tucker question. What was it? Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, the Tucker. Do you guys think he's gonna run for president?
No, I don't think so.
Like the
John. You think he's got better things to do?
He made too much money doing what he does.
Get to chill out, say whatever you want to say. JD Vance might run as his protege. That would be the most likely. And then on the Democratic side. Yeah, you'd have something like with Jon Stewart backing. I don't know. Ossoff would be interesting. Ossoff would be a very interesting.
Ossoff's been
very solid,
actually. Yeah,
super impressive, and Georgia senator, and I think Ossoff is a serious deal, not AOC, not like the milieu of Cory Booker's and their equivalents out there that are like
Cory Booker's and Sanch. That guy's a loser.
Because he's a Democrat. Yeah. Well, you never know. Like, but it's interesting watching Rahm Emanuel. Like, guys, like his connections to Israel are so deep, right? He's like, we got to sanction Israel, right? Like, so it shows you where the Democratic Party is. Right
I know that's it's actually wild. But like, if I like But the thing is, if you want to sanction Israel, you're not voting, which is what most Democrat voters want to do. You're not going to vote for Rahm Emanuel, right? You're going to vote for Ossoff or AOC or maybe Newsom if you're an idiot, which, some people are.
I don't think he can pull off in the end because his like wishy-washiness on like the Democrats hid and their distorted autopsy on purpose, right? Well, first of all, they used like AI and paid like some insider to produce the worst autopsy possible, but they specifically excluded the two things that really counted, as far as I know, inflation, one of them, but the other one, Palestine, Gaza. And with Gaza, if Kamala Harris would have just emoted that she cared, she would have won the election. Trump kind of gave that impression, right? So he wins in Michigan, wins mayors in Michigan because of it. It's interesting.
Even if Harris had been like Biden's, delayed weapon shipment, I'm going to make that permanent. Like one weapon shipment, I think she could have won over a lot of people because, I mean,
what would be the difference? It was that close.
People are pragmatic. She had allowed Palestinians to speak at the DNC, right? Like there are small gestures she could have done to show, to signal some departure from Biden that she opted not to do. It's her own damn fault. But I wanted to, moving on from the US and around, I did want to talk about Lebanon, because that, from my relatively limited understanding, seems to be a big sticking point in negotiations right now with the Iranians and the Americans, was whether Lebanon should apply to this ceasefire agreement, right? So I guess tell us about.
It's not whether they do, Jeremy. Like I even jump in, like the Iranians from the game have always said Lebanon is part of the ceasefire agreement. So it's not even whether, it's like Iran has said from the beginning, and Pakistan pointed out, hey, this was the deal.
Right, but the Americans are saying no. So that's what I mean.
Yeah, Trump spoke to Netanyahu. He's like, okay, wait a minute. Actually, Lebanon doesn't matter. And the Israelis know this, so they're using Lebanon to prevent there being an overall peace deal. So every time you get close to a peace deal, that's when they really attack Lebanon hard. It also shows you how sad our situation is in Gaza. They don't even bother with Gaza anymore. It's now Lebanon. So that's when they move into attacking Beirut.
There's like nothing left to
really.
Gaza.
I mean, no, hold on. I mean, they massacred the family in Gaza yesterday. I don't know how many.
I didn't mean there aren't people left in Gaza.
But nobody's paying attention. Nobody's paying attention to Gaza. This is the thing. So, like, the reason why Lebanon is the one that gets more attention than Gaza right now, it's not. I mean, obviously, there's an intensification of what's happening in Lebanon, but Iran has tied Lebanon to the ceasefire deal and peace deal with the Americans. And Iran is the one that holds the cards because they're the ones that can inflict. They're the only ones that can inflict pain on the Americans and in the global economy. The Lebanese can't. The Palestinians can't. So the reason why you don't see as much attention to Gaza today is because precisely for this reason, that we can't, Palestinians are not Palestinian, we can't inflict economic pain on the Americans or the global economy so people can ignore us. And that's, by the way, that's the message that everybody is reading. And I was saying that in our show, in the episode that we posted yesterday, is that's the message that the whole world receives. Like, you only get attention and you only get the West to stop attacking you and killing you if you put hurt on them. There's the only way to do it with them. You can't do it with international law. You can't do it with morals. You can't do it with pleading the justice of your case. They won't listen to that. They don't give a shit about that. That's how the world understands the West, and rightfully so. That's the right lesson to take from this, because look, there's the evidence right in front of you. So Israel knows that Lebanon is the key to ruining any deal that the Americans might sign with Iran, and that's why they step up every time to try to end it. And the other message, and that's what I said as well yesterday. The other message that they try to send to the Americans is, hey, don't forget how great we are militarily. Look at how quickly we can just move up to Beirut. Look at how quickly we can destroy all these villages. Look at how quickly we can colonize all these lands. And not one Arab state will say a damn word. Not one of them will do, not just like, of course they'll release their stupid words of condemnation, but not one word in the sense that they'll not do anything. They're going to go along with this order that we're establishing with our might. And this order is for you too. It's not just for us. This is what allows the Americans to build their power in and control and domination over the whole region. And nobody can put the Arabs in their place like we can for you. So don't forget that. And just like we can do that here, continue with our mission to reshape the Middle East, a plan, by the way, that Biden was fully on board with this whole idea of reshaping the Middle East, and trying to convince the Americans that we got to continue on this path, and that means we got to take down Iran. It's still got to be part of the plan.
I've literally been hearing about this new Middle East that the Americans and Israelis want to create for my entire life, since I can remember.
None of it will work, by the way. None of this will work.
Well, of course,
because it's a fantasy.
But is it it's not designed like. Do you think?
I think. Look, ultimately, the Israelis do think that their only way. Look, the reality is that they are a foreign invasion into the region, pure and simple. I don't care what anybody has to say with the bullshit about the mainstream. This is the reality of the situation. They are European Jews who come into the region. They're not from the region. They're not of the region, and then they come in and colonize it. And then Arab Jews from across the region are forced. Essentially to come into Israel, but it's still a European ideology that drives it. They consider themselves part of the West and part of the Western imperial infrastructure. They're in Eurovision. They're in the UEFA. They're, everything is, and in their words, look at this whole genocide. They framed in like, we are part of the civilizational war of the West versus the barbaric East. They're like, this is not some kind of mystery here. Unless you listen to the stupid CBC and BBC and all these idiots, then you know the reality. So they know, like, as foreign invaders, they're, of course, like, who likes foreign invaders? Who goes, oh yes, I'm so happy that you came to kill me and rule over me and take all over my land and my homes, and like nobody ever has said that in the history of humanity. So people resist them. So they know that their project invites resistance and hostility towards them. It's their project that does that, not some ancient hatred and blah 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 blah. All that's nonsense, or Islamic fundamentalism or any of that bullshit. So they know that it's going to continue to breed resistance. Their approach to this is to go, well, we just hit them so hard, they'll give up. They'll give up resistance. They'll go, there's no way to resist this power, and we have to just subdue ourselves to them and live wherever they let us live and however they let us live. This is the fantasy of the Israeli state that actually they believe they can achieve. And then you have stupid sectors, small sectors of the colonized societies that go along with that. So, for example, the current Lebanese government. And this is what Sammy really illuminated for us when we asked him that question. He's like, why would they do this? This makes no sense. The deal they signed yesterday is so dumb. I was on TRT. I was like, I can't give you a rational explanation for why they would sign it. Like, it makes actually no rational sense whatsoever.
So for people who don't know what, maybe me. What does this deal consist of? Is this the deal? I was just scanning FT's headlines that Hezbollah came out and rejected.
Oh, it's such a stupid deal. So okay, so let me preface this by saying, like, the point that Sammy made is that this is a sector of the elite that was basically saying, we can't beat Israel. How do we live with them the best way we could? And while our elites do well doing so, right? Like, that's essentially what the Lebanese government is thinking. So yesterday they signed this deal with the Americans and the Israeli state, and of course Hezbollah is not part of the negotiations whatsoever. And the idea of it is that Hezbollah, Israel will cease its attacks on Lebanon and Lebanese territory as long as Hezbollah no longer fires anything at Israeli soldiers, not just the Israeli settlements in the north, but Israeli soldiers. Like, they're not going to hit them or anything like that. And they're going to move north of the Litani River. So basically give up a good chunk of southern Lebanon, remove themselves from it. If they remove themselves from it and no longer fire on Israel, Israel won't fire. But if Hezbollah does any of those things, if an Israeli soldier sees a Hezbollah fighter going for a stroll in somewhere south of the Litani River, Israel can now have the legal right to strike anywhere in Lebanon, and not just that first, anywhere in Lebanon, right? Like, so that's the deal that Lebanon's done, and then for that to become a long-term deal, the Hezbollah would have to cease to exist. In Hezbollah is not this like foreign implant coming from Iran. This is the stupid North American media and Western media. They're Lebanese people. They're from the south and other parts of Lebanon. That's who Hezbollah is. They're Shiite Lebanese. And by the way, there are Sunni and Christian fighters that join them. They don't technically become part of their fighting militias, but they fight alongside them. But anyway, and they have support from those communities too. It's not just Shiites that support Hezbollah. At any rate, so they're Lebanese, and they have political wing, a social wing, cultural wing, religious wing, like not just wing, I shouldn't say wing, establishments, institutions across Lebanon that have been built for decades. These are well established. People's livelihoods depend on them. People's social services depend on them. There's full support. They want all that gone. They want all that to disappear into thin air. And then, and only then, will they make a peace deal with the Lebanese government. In addition, they're going to create what they're going to call, forget now, zones or bubbles or whatever in the south, where they're going to bring the Lebanese armed forces to help disarm Hezbollah in the south. This is insane for the Lebanese government to agree to this. And the whole discourse, by the way, is like about sovereignty. Like, this is about respecting sovereignty of Lebanon. Right now, Israel occupies 20% of Lebanon. They're violating their sovereignty day in and day out. They're killing Lebanese left and right with no consequences. They just massacred a family of 5 or 6 on Monday, including a 6-year-old girl. No consequences, right? Like, they're violating the sovereignty of people's bodies and lands and homes and everything. So the fact that the Lebanese government would sign on to this is so pathetic. This is what my best explanation as to why they do it. One is they can't stop Israel. The best they can do is to go subdue themselves and bow down to Israel and to a deal that is impossible to implement. None of this is possible to implement. It's actually practically impossible, and I can explain why if we have time. But so they can't stop Israel. This is the best they can do. Meanwhile, Iran is actually getting the Americans to tell the Israelis stop attacking Lebanon. So to them, they're like, holy shit. I mean, if that actually happens, who's going to take us seriously? Our own people won't believe we're the sovereign government. Like, they're going to be like, Iran got us everything. You didn't. What the fuck are you doing here? And the Lebanese people largely don't like their government because of the economic corruption. Even if they support them on some of the politics and they want, sort of normalization. Well, actually, the percentage of people in Lebanon that want normalization with Israel is extremely low. But even those people have a lot of distrust of the government on economic grounds. But anyway, so that's one of the reasons why the Lebanese government is doing it. But it's making them look even weaker. It's making them look worse. So it's irrational still, as far as I'm concerned. The second one, the second one, the second one is that they're desperate for American money to refurbish their military, which is so weak. And I assume there was some of that happening behind closed doors, that the Americans were like, we'll give your military some money to buy, maybe a Jeep that works or a car that doesn't have 2 holes in it, and things like that. But it's also, again, in the long term, they can't defeat Hezbollah. Israel can't defeat Hezbollah, and Israel is armed to the teeth with American weapons. You think Lebanon with a new car and a couple of new weapons are going to be able to do it? Zero chance. So it still is irrational.
But I'm gonna counter your point. I think a bit based on Sami Hermez's discussion, Mohamed. A bit more Sami's discussion was that you might see factions in Lebanon that actually want to cooperate with Israelis, see the Muslim population, see the Shia population as problematic, right? So this is the idea that you can get rid of the South and you can have a successful state living
fantasy
next to Israel.
Absolute fantasy.
But yeah, this is rational in their mind, right? So it seems irrational.
It's irrational. I don't do the whole. No, we can't do the whole. Oh, it's rational in your mind. Trump is rational in his mind. No.
Where correct.
Is there an internal logic to it? I think that's what Jeremy is
not only that, there's an internal
suggesting.
logic. If you're like going a little bit further and you're fighting on the wars, so this is something that people don't understand right now. Warfare, as we've known it since World War II, has been thrown in the bin. Warfare since World War II, what was it based on? Aircraft carriers, Merkabas, tanks, heavy armor right on the ground, air power. You send in the Blitzkrieg, like what the Germans were doing, to the extent the Japanese with naval power and the Zeros. The Americans afterwards become the experts in this in global affairs, right? Is you send the air carrier groups, right? The carrier groups that now are as far as they can be from around as possible so they don't get sunk to the bottom of the ocean, because that warfare doesn't matter anymore. So the Israelis went to southern Lebanon. So maybe that logic, it seems irrational right now, but that's before FPV drones, right? So there's some estimates that up to 400 Israeli armored vehicles, maybe even Merkabas, have been destroyed. Israel has a lot of armor. It has a lot coming from the United States, but this is significant, right? We don't actually know what the real Israeli casualties are. There's like 25 soldiers have been admitted dead. How many like severely injured? A lot of its soldiers nowadays, right? Western armies, Israeli, American armies, they'll be severely disabled. Think of like Brian Mast, the congressperson who wears the IDF uniform into Congress, right? He has two false legs because he was evacuated from the battlefield. He can still technically sort of go to war. We've seen people with like prosthetics going to war, but a lot of people are rescued from the battlefield that would have been dead in the past. So there's been heavy damage inflicted by Hezbollah right now, and they've been carrying out warfare against the Israeli military forces invading southern Lebanon in a more impactful way than even 2006 when Israel had to retreat, when Ehud Olmert was the prime minister, and he wasn't.
I don't see that very different. I don't see it as different because there were no drones. There was no drones. Israel occupied southern Lebanon for 18 years. 18 years. This is before drones were everything. My point is that you'll always have, whether it's drones or some other technical technique or strategy or whatever that is used that will appear in different historical periods. I don't think that that's the determining factor. The determining factor is the people's resistance. And the people's resistance, they will never accept being kicked off their land and just being subdued to some foreign invader. And they'll come up with all kinds of solutions. They'll come up with all kinds of solutions.
I disagree with you there. You can destroy people relatively from their land in this way, and we're seeing in Area C of the West.
It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened.
People may want to come back, but the difference right now is 18 years ago, the United States would not have thrown everything it has to support this conflict, right? Like 18 years ago, the United States has been like, you can't go any further than this, right? Now they're like, go all the way, whatever you need. But because warfare has changed, they're losing. Like, so I'll disagree with you there, but I agree with you on the steadfastness. Like the Sumud for Lebanese people, like the Palestinians, they're there. And
again, but they were there for 18 years before. They were there for 18 years before. It's not like this is not, and they had the backing of the U.S. and they had the backing of the West, and everybody was on their side, and they had all of that, and they couldn't do it.
The West is throwing everything into this conflict in the Middle East right now, and they're losing. And
they're still not doing it.
The world is changing, but I guess the consistent factor is no matter how much the West wants to be in the Middle East and conquer it and create this greater Western project, maybe led by Israel, maybe led by the United States, who knows, maybe the UAE in the end. The people do not want them there. They want freedom. They want to exist with equality, with universal rights in the region between all people living there, including Israelis. And this is what they want. And this is the battle that's going on right now. And it is the consistent battle. And the West is throwing every resource it can into the region and losing because it doesn't want this. And it's doing that through Israel. And so maybe you and I are like arguing over the little bit of the little edges in southern Lebanon. They're going to keep losing. They haven't even technically won by the Israeli standard in Gaza, right? Hamas is still there and it's still armed. It's like a minor armed gang relatively, right? They're moving around, they're attacking things, they're blowing it up. I like Sagar and Jetty's analogy on Breaking Points. It's like a cartoon army that just goes in. It's a terrible thing, but it goes in and just blows things up and it doesn't actually have any strategic impact.
I wanted to circle back to Gaza because I was wondering, you mentioned how Iran has insisted that Lebanon be part of the negotiations and hasn't done so for Gaza. And I think I misspoke when I said, well, I mean, Gaza's completely destroyed, which obviously there are people there.
It is, right.
Right. You know, I mean, they can't do the Dahiya doctrine in Gaza anymore because it's flat. And it's just people starving.
There's no songbirds in Gaza because there's no trees. Like the songbird, the chickadee, or something equivalent here in Alberta.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, right? Like agricultural land, it's not just about buildings, but also as Jeremy just noted, like Hamas is in power, at least in the part of Gaza that is the shrinking part of Gaza that isn't Israeli.
30% is down to 40-30%.
Right, that's right. Netanyahu just said, let's start with 70 and then, you know, we'll see if you vote for me. Why hasn't this been part of Iran's negotiating tactic? Have they just like abandoned the Palestinians?
This is part of that myth that Iran was like supporting Hamas, supporting the Palestinians. I gotta tell you, like, and Mohammed, you can maybe follow what you think, but like on the ground in Palestine, there's no connection to Iran. There's almost no connection to Iran. Maybe, and we do see signs that like there's some support in Gaza towards like the later stages of the conflict, of the occupation, of the colonization. But in general, like there's just no strong links. There's just never really been the strong links. Like with the Shia of southern Lebanon, there's a deep, strong link to Iran. But this was on the Palestinian side too. Like, just wasn't ever that interest in Iran. There was never money coming in. If anything, like the funding, as we know, Netanyahu was diverting to Gaza, was from Qatar in order to keep the Palestinians divided by having Hamas and Gaza divide and conquer it. And the Palestinian Authority, which is funded by Western powers in the West Bank and is kept to basically the cities, like the reservation system in Canada, with Area C being rapidly colonized, people being forced off their lands. Area B, which is like the A, B, and C, by the way, folks. Like Area C is like the vast majority of the West Bank is like the hinterland, the agricultural land outside of the cities and towns.
Right?
And
like
Area
A is the population, like the cities, right?
So Area A would be like Edmonton, right? And then Area B might be, what is it like? Where do all these hockey players come from in the south? St. Albert. And then Area B would be like these small
Medicine
towns
Hat.
And Medicine, well, maybe if you're in like more like Calgary oriented, but like but like Area B would be like these small towns outside the cities. So like Calgary, Airdrie would be Area B. So Area A would be Calgary, and that's where like Palestinians are all corralled into literally, let's think of like camps, like pushed into cities, and they're funded by Western powers, Europe, Canada, to be made economically viable, because every city needs its hinterland, needs its agricultural land. The Palestinian culture and its identity is related to the olive groves, to the agricultural land. So Area C is where people are being concentrated. Area B was like, and they could have self-rule relatively. It's like, what is it, Mohammed? Like 22% of the West Bank, of like the 22% of historic Palestine, right? And Area B is like the smaller towns on the outside of Area A. And the Israelis would look after security, so to speak, right? Like all colonial powers. And the Palestinians could administer the social programs, because Israelis don't really want to do that, because they don't really want them to be there. And then those are the towns that are being attacked right now, if you see in the media, by the settlers. Area C was the agriculture land. And this was like sort of like controlled by Israel in the West Bank. And it's been rapidly like colonized by Israel in recent times. And you're seeing like in the Gaza, like the same thing, like people are being pushed now into this tiny little bit of land. Despite all this, Palestinians are resilient, and they're still pushing back, just like indigenous people, by the way, in North America, in Canada. Even despite all of the colonization, like the most of the hinterland of Canada is still rather indigenous, and you're still seeing the same thing in Palestine. So, Mohammed, I'm going to go in like where you're right. Like, despite all of this pressure, despite all of the attacks, like the indigenous people are holding on to their land. In Arabic, you say sumud. It's like steadfastness. You're holding on to your land.
Are you explaining Arabic to a guy named Mohana?
Mohana, I heard this word before. So no, but within all of this milieu, like I'm getting off the track of the Iranians. The Iran's not really been a factor in this, and I think Mohana, like I've been on a panel recently, we're talking about like Palestinian Iranian human rights. And we just could struggle. I would struggle to think of any time. I spent a lot of time in Palestine. Iran is just not a factor there. In fact, I have to say there's just like a little bit of a distance because of the different culture and religion. Mahana, did you feel like as a Palestinian?
Okay, so it's not you're like, okay, I'm going to take this a bit of a different angle altogether.
Okay.
Palestine does not, and Palestinians don't have any state around the world that is willing to do big things for it. Zero, none. And it hasn't happened. I mean, you could say maybe, in 48 and 67, some of the Arab states did go to war.
Maybe Nasser.
But yeah, with Nasser, but anyway, but even those were not. They didn't like unleash their full power. And certainly, for a few decades now, no state anywhere has gone all out for Palestine. Why? Because states act in self-interest, and they haven't seen where their self-interest is to go all in for Palestine. To me, this is also extremely short-sighted on the behalf of states. There are many states that actually have a lot to gain from fully going in on Palestine, but it hasn't happened yet. Anyway, that's a different discussion. But I think Iran is no different. Iran, I do believe that obviously the population for sure has enormous connection to the Palestinian cause, to the Palestinian people. They do wish to see justice for the Palestinian people. I believe there's people within the state as well that feel the same way. But ultimately, they have to act in what is good for them, and they obviously see Hezbollah's survival as much more important to their geopolitical and their own state interest than Hamas. And like many states, I would say around the world, they probably have made, like especially in the global South, they probably have made the calculation that the Palestinian people are holding on barely, but they're holding on. They're likely to hold on for a while. If things switch, if they generate some material power somehow, not just within Palestine, but across the Arab world, then we can switch too. But until then, we just sit and watch and give support for them here and there, some of which is designed to help them maintain their presence on the land, but not enough is going to that, by the way. So that's kind of where the larger, broader geopolitical picture on the question of Palestine is. Now, where Palestine has its real power is in people power. We're a stateless people. We don't have a state. We've never had one. So we can't generate state power. But we do have a lot of people power. People around the world feel a very strong attachment to the Palestinian cause. Why? Because we are the real underdogs, despite what Zionists would like you to believe, that they're the great, that they're the great underdog story and blah 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 blah. People know that we're the underdog story today, and people relate to it in the sense of fighting against all odds for justice, which is something that is meaningful for people. It's more despite the fact that we live in a very neoliberal capitalist world and all that, people's search for meaning and substantive life is still there. People want that. That's not something you can take out of human beings. So people do find meaning in it. They find that it actually gives their life purpose. It directs their life on a path towards justice. So it speaks to their own oppression, however that plays out in people's lives in different places. It speaks to their own aspirations for what it's like to be free and gain justice for all the injustice that you have experienced. It does all those things for people. So because it does that, it can generate a different kind of power, not a state power, but a people power that can disrupt states. And when you can disrupt states, whether it's through boycotts, protests, civil disobedience, occupation of public spaces, and so on, you can put pressure on states to act and to take different directions. So that still, to me, remains the best path for Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian struggle is to continue to build people power, and eventually, either that works in and of itself through economic isolation of the Israeli state by people power, or another path is that eventually some new leadership in the region will emerge that will finally understand that the only way they can gain legitimacy as rulers of their own people is to go all in on Palestine. So Palestine can give them a legitimacy that no weapons can ever buy. Because most of the regimes in the region hold themselves through violence. Their legitimacy is through violence, whether it's the secret police or torture, imprisonment, draconian laws, authoritarian laws, and so on and so forth. That's how they hold their legitimacies, through fear. And that's not stable in the long term. So when eventually that crumbles, and I don't know when that's going to happen. That could be 50 years down the line. It could be 100 years down the line. Maybe it's 10. Maybe it's 5. Who knows? But when that happens, someone is going to see the light and is going to say, I'm not going to use fear. I'm going to use the legitimacy of Palestine to get my legitimacy, and not just the fake one that they're doing today, because that's not going to work once that revolutionary change happens. But it's going to be a different kind of legitimacy that is real and substantive, and they're going to see the power of doing it. Now, there's also, and I've argued this throughout the genocide, the interest for many countries around the world, especially in the global south, is actually very clear to me. Israel is the tool in the U.S. imperial toolbox. It's the best tool they have. Why wouldn't you want to take the best tools they have away? Like, I know everybody's afraid of going face to face with the Americans. Maybe less so now that Iran has gone face to face and they've come out all right so far. But people are still afraid of that. And they're afraid of that not just from the military might of the US, but the economic might of the US. So, okay, don't take them on head on. Take out their toolbox. Isolate Israel and take away their best weapon to control you and control the global economy. It needs obviously visionary and bold leadership. I understand that. But these are the times for that kind of leadership to emerge and really transform this world order. I've been saying this since 2023. If China, Colombia, Brazil, South Africa, Nigeria, God forbid, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Egypt, Indonesia, Malaysia, Turkey, maybe even Spain, Norway, Ireland, God forbid, Canada. If they all came up and said, we're going to create a global coalition, and we're not debating this. Like today, all economic and diplomatic relations with Israel are done, severed completely 100%. And we're going to create a movement, like a project to gather more states into our orbit. The genocide would have stopped the next day, and the Americans would have been completely helpless to do anything about those countries doing that, and they would have forced Israel to stop. But they didn't do that, and that speaks louder than words. So Iran is no different than those states for doing that. Now, Iranians will also tell you, look, if we give Israel a strategic defeat, then that's a strategic win for the Palestinian cause. So that would be their argument on that front. Whether you accept that argument or not is another question. But they're not going to go all. They're not going to risk all of this to save Hamas. Now, look,
close, but add in the Hezbollah was a close ally fighting according to what they needed in their minds in this war.
And
right?
they can. They have access to state structures. They also have at the time they could transfer weapons to them through Syria. You can't get shit into Palestine. Israel has a fucking stranglehold. It's hard. It's just actually also materially difficult to do. So there's many, material factors that also real obstacles. But let me say this. The losses in Palestine have been severe, and they've been severe for a long time. But the resistance is not broken. The will to resist is not broken by the Palestinians. And just to go back, Jeremy, you can use your military to take land, but can you actually end the resistance towards that project? That's the question that you can't achieve militarily. And that was my point. So it doesn't matter what weapons the resistance uses, whether it's drones or some other thing you use. It's the will to resist that cannot be broken. And so long as the will to resist is not broken, then you haven't actually colonized all those lands definitively, conclusively, and finally. You will not get that normalization. Israel will never get that normalization it seeks, and it will certainly never achieve it through military action. But that's the road they keep going back on, and they can't go on any other road. They don't know how to do anything else.
It hasn't on Turtle Island either, right? I mean, as bad as things are for indigenous nations here, they still resist, right, to this day. And the same thing can be said in Palestine. It's not even as severe, like as shocking as that is. It's not even as severe, the conditions there. Mohammed, something to add too is like the Palestinians. You were touching on something that any major local regional power that wants to grow and be impactful or gain prestige, they will take on the Palestinian cause. Somebody said about here, everybody identifies. So even the Iranian government doesn't see strategically Palestine as vital to having a ceasefire. It still realizes if you want legitimacy, you support the Palestinians, right? Palestinians, I got to really respect Canada. Canada used to always say there's this nonsense argument that people still believe in. Canada punches above its weight, right? It's like this, the world needs more Canada is the 2017 slogan. The Canada punches above its weight. Canada relatively was once a significant soft power. That is, you could influence countries by its impact, because it's a popular country in the world. When you talk about the Palestinians, this is like the soft power, superpower. Anybody like who supports the Palestinians is like considered, wow, you're great, it's wonderful. You're supporting a just cause against injustice in the world. You're supporting the most just cause, which is against colonialism, against genocide.
Well, I would just say that Canada does punch above its weight in terms of like CO2 emissions and doing extractive imperialism in the global south.
They're pretty good at it. Mining companies.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole peacekeeping stuff is fantasy. So the peacekeeping.
Peace what?
I see. So one last thing, we've been here a while. I do want to ask about the Gulf states, the role the Gulf states have been playing here, because this is really interesting stuff, right? I mean, they seem to be bearing the brunt of a lot of Iranian retaliation for the U.S.-Israeli war. And you've been, they've been like my favorite Alberta separatist streamers. I mean, they've been fighting. They've been feuding with each other, right? And so you have Qatar and the UAE and Saudi Arabia, as the main like powers in the Gulf, right? I mean, there's also Yemen, which does Yemen count as a Gulf state?
No.
I don't think so.
Located in the Gulf.
Oman, it stops at Oman.
Oman, right?
Yeah.
Oman. There's an interesting episode recently of I think it was Radio Warner, where they were talking about Oman. But anyways, there's also Ansar Allah in Yemen who play, I think, a similar role as Hezbollah, as firm Iranian ally in the region. So let's talk about the Gulf state. Also, I mean, the UAE, as you mentioned earlier, Mohammed. I mean, they're going all in with the United States and Israel. They pulled out of OPEC. They still part of BRICS. In the UAE. Is that right?
They have the Israeli troops in the UAE. It's a new. They were manning what is it, the Arrow system, Mohammed? I think. Anyways, one of the Israeli
something like that. I forget. Yeah.
Systems.
I'm sure the population loves that.
There's not. Yeah, probably not a lot, right? So they didn't really want to talk about it. They don't like talking about the close links, but it's out there. They're the linchpin in the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords is like the precursor to everything here. So in a way, the Gulf states are super important to the story because the Trump administration came in very pro-Israel in the first term. Like the Biden administration that follows the exact same Trump policies in the Middle East. In fact, trying to double down on them.
Bush administration.
Well, Obama was a little bit different. Obama had some of the two-state solution stuff, and also Obama administration was a little bit more into destroying countries and leaving them to collapse, like Libya and Syria. whereas the Trump administration is a little bit more about changing the leader and making them pro-America, right? But they came in with the UAE and you have two like strands to deal with Palestinians in the U.S. politics. The Democrats are kind of like, okay, let's do something like the reservation system in the United States. So like the Oslo Accords is really like the Palestinians will get a little bits of lands. They can live on it, pretend they have autonomy, but they don't really. And then you have the Republicans who are like, let's make the Palestinians happy with no rights. And that's sort of been the Trump approach, right? And so the Abraham Accords is premised on the idea, let's normalize Israel in the region. Normalize, when they talk about normalization, that means Israel is, people make treaties with Israel and recognize it as a state with borders, even though Israel doesn't recognize its own borders. It's its own separate story another day. And the UAE ultimately jumps on board with the Trump administration. But there's deep links that have been going back between the Gulf states and Israel for some time, UAE in particular, especially with MBZ. And they come up with this idea, let's do the Abraham Accords where we'll ignore the Palestinians. They don't exist. It's not a problem. And let's just normalize, like everybody's happy in the region, and Israel can have all of historic Palestine and whatever else it takes, like the Golan Heights. And this is like the precursor to the war we're in right now. And the UAE is at the lead of this, and they're trying to get in the Saudis. MBZ, Mohammed bin Zayed, the head of Abu Dhabi, the head of the UAE, is really sort of like a mentor, so to speak, for Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince in Saudi Arabia. And the idea is we can get the Saudis on board, because Saudi Arabia by far is the most important Gulf state, the richest, the biggest population, the most structured state. If anything, it's the most state in the region versus like some city states on the coast. And the idea was that we bring in Saudi Arabia to the Abraham Accords. Biden tried hard. This is going to be one of the sort of like September 29th, 2023. They thought they were there. October 6th, 2023. There was the idea that Saudi Arabia was going to normalize any day with Israel, leading to October 7th, and then the Palestinians would be ignored. So the Gulf has been a centerpiece of this story, including because there was this threat that the Saudi Arabia would recognize Israel at the expense of Palestinians. There is some thought that this led to Hamas carrying out the attacks on October 7th. Like this was like a motivating factor. We need to act now, otherwise Palestinians can be completely erased in the Abraham Accords. So we have an Abraham Accords without Saudi Arabia in it. You have Bahrain, you have UAE. Bahrain is kind of like a proxy for Saudi Arabia at the time. And we're leading into Trump's second term. Biden, Gaza genocide, the horrors there. The Gulf states are, and I'm going to think of Russia right now, Russia and Ukraine. When Russia invades Ukraine, if you look at all the Canadian statements, Russian troops went from Belarus south, going for Kiev. Canada condemns and sanctions and goes after, and everybody goes after Belarus. This is like the Gulf states in the Iran war. So you have Israel attacking from the west. The United States is attacking from the Gulf states. Because of this, the Iranians end up attacking all the American bases. There used to be these maps of Iran, right? Maybe you guys saw it, like these maps of Iran. Who's threatening who? It would be like a map of Iran surrounded by American military bases. Iran basically attacks all of them, destroys all of them. Nobody wants to admit to it, but they make them uninhabitable very quickly, absolutely eviscerate them, especially because the Trump administration didn't really want troop casualties. They move all the troops out and put them in hotels in places like Dubai. And these bases are really vulnerable. They get completely destroyed. Even at one point, like an Iranian, I think F5, like some old fighter jet goes into like some Iraqi or Kuwaiti or whatever American military base, I think it's Kuwait, and actually attacks them. The Iranians, though, have been pretty strategic when attacking the Gulf. Mohammed, you and I have had this discussion, like you and I both like, whoa, what are they doing? Like attacking the Gulf states. From that same perspective, it would be like Ukraine attacking Belarus. I don't think they did, but definitely Belarus was sanctioned and considered like accomplice with Russia. In this case, Iranians attacked them, but in particular, the countries that are most closely allied with the United States. So the countries where their infrastructure would tend to be attacked, with the UAE in particular. UAE has been, when you look at the rocket attacks, attacked far more, and nobody really knows the damage done because of the censorship regime there, far more than other Gulf states. Kuwait, to a great extent, where there's significant American military bases. Bahrain, where you have the American Fifth Fleet. And then in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, the Iranians tended to attack the American military bases, but been encouraging them not to be close with the other countries and trying to like cause a discord. And it's been working. The Saudis are like, wait a minute, we don't want to be part of this war anymore. Maybe they didn't in the first place. Nobody really knows. But they're emoting diplomatically, we don't want to be in this war. The UAE, to this moment, seems to want to be in this war for whatever reason. Kuwait, they're kind of stuck there hostage and not able to ship any oil right now. Bahrain, Who knows how they're existing at this point? Probably being bailed out. Bahrain is actually about 50% Shia. One of the major sites of the Arab uprisings, and Saudis put it down. But this is a country that wants democracy, wants freedom. It's the Gulf states right now are somewhat belligerents to different extents. The UAE almost basically and possibly an ally with Israel and the United States in these attacks. And for the Iranians, they looked at the Gulf states also, by the way, and they said, wait a minute, this is the underbelly of the American empire. This is how much of the 20% of the world's energy comes through the Strait of Hormuz. Let's shut that down. But also, how much money from these rich Gulf Arab states gets reinvested back into the American economy? Buying weapons, money laundering, right? How much of that money goes into the AI, the stock market, buying this AI stock bubble we're in? Is being inflated in no small measure from Gulf money. The Iranians have been attacking them to attack the United States very effectively. They attacked Israel, that's significant, but attacking these Gulf states that weren't really ready for this war, that's been very significant. This is where the real damage is. That's when we talk about the Strait of Hormuz, and this is putting pressure on the Trump administration. And these Gulf states, meanwhile, have watched the United States spend like endless munitions to defend Israel, and while holding back munitions like Patriot missiles that should go to the Gulf states. So it's the Iranians have been pretty clever, whether you agree with war or not. They have been pretty clever strategically to go after the Gulf states. Bold but clever, and the Gulf states have the UAE to an extent have put itself in this situation.
Yeah. And like I said before, extremely risky. Like this is a very risky strategy, but it has paid off for them. So let me just kind of pick up where Jeremy left off, and like, so what are things like looking forward? So just to be clear, the tensions between the Gulf states are not new. They've been there for a while, and there's been this shift the last I don't know how many years now, maybe 5 or 6 years or so, whereas the shift is the Saudi are moving away from UAE, right? Before it was like they were buddies and they were ganging up on Qatar, right? Like they blockaded Qatar, and they demanded the closure of Al Jazeera.
They were going to invade.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's not for Turkey.
Yeah, and actually, also the Americans reminded Trump at the time. I forget who was the Secretary of State at the time. Yeah. He was like, "We have a base there, sir," because I think Trump was like, "Yeah, sure." And I think the guy was like, "We have a big base there. We might not want to invade."
Well, that's the thing with having like an oil man as your Secretary of State.
Yeah, that's right. That's
understands
right.
the region.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, so there was things have shifted a lot since then, right? So I think the key for me, always the key country to look at here is Saudi, because more or less we know UAE and Bahrain have gone into, they're the nice little servants of the US, exactly, and they're just like trying to impress the US and be like, look, we can do the things that Israel does too, and you can be our friend too, and the US is like, no, actually you're really bad at that, but sure, buddy, give me more money. UAE fails everywhere it goes. It failed in Syria, it failed in Sudan, it's failing in Somalia, it fails in Libya, it fails everywhere. In Yemen, everywhere it goes, they're idiots. Sorry, but that's the reality. So we know where they are. Then you have Qatar and Oman are much more careful, of course, and they basically, Qatar and Oman just want to play all sides and be like, can everybody be our friend so that nobody invades us? That's kind of their simplified strategy. Like I said, the one, and Kuwait just will eventually go along with the Saudis, I think. But anyway, they're not a big country anyway, so they are a bit harder to read, as Jeremy was saying. But Saudis are the ones to watch,
and very pro-Palestinian. By the way, the Saudis are very pro-Palestinian in the population.
In terms of the population, yes. In terms of the population, yeah. I mean, the leadership
but isn't the population in every Arab country pro-Palestinian?
Saudi, yes. Yeah, but you're right. It is in all of them. Like if you look at polls where they're like, "Are you good with normalization?" and like it's 80+%. They're like, "Fuck no, we're not. We don't want that." So and in some places it's 90+. Right? So it's high. We'll see what, like, that's the one that I'm watching closely. What are the Saudis going to do? Are they going to move closer to the Qatar approach? I highly doubt they move closer to the UAE approach. They really don't have good relations with the UAE. It's actually quite serious in terms of their differences. Even within the population, there's a lot of tensions rising between the Saudis and the Emiratis on a sort of civil society level. So I think that's gone. I don't foresee the Saudis just joining with that. But I don't know what they're going to do, and I don't trust them as a Palestinian. I don't trust that they're going to be good for us. They're going to have to prove it to me over a long period of time for me to say that I do. But I will actually I'll say this though, to kind of I don't want to distract from the Gulf. I'll come back to the Gulf, but like to go back to Israel. If the Israeli state today said, you know what, we're withdrawing from the West Bank and Gaza, we'll create a fake Palestinian state, not a real Palestinian state, a fake Palestinian state on 22% of historic Palestine. An Oslo state in 22%. And you know what? We're even going to keep a couple of the big settlements in that 22%. What are you going to do? It happens.
And they can have some desert land.
Yeah, in return or something like that. Anyway, but they probably don't even have to do that. But if they just
part of Egypt, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's always the plan. We'll give them part of the desert.
Yeah. So, but if they come out and say that today, Saudi would sign on the normalization deal in 2 seconds. This is why I don't trust Saudi, right? Like, and they'll just go, okay, beautiful, fake Palestinian state thing is off my desk. Can we move on? I would like to do business with Israel and the U.S. openly and without any hindrance from now on, and it would all end. It literally, the Palestinian question would be very difficult for the Palestinians to carry out the struggle in that context. The struggle to right of return, full sovereignty, a real state, all of these things would be thrown under the bus so hard by the Gulf states that it would actually be really difficult. Probably the struggle will continue in some way, but it will be extremely weakened and it would lose its international appeal and attention. That's all Israel has to do. But Israel won't do that because they want everything. They could actually have the dream of the liberal Zionists of the 70s and 80s, right? Like they could have all of that right now in one announcement, but they won't do it because they're like, no, we want everything, and then we want normalization on top of that. So when Trump comes out with this, because that was clearly, probably that whatever, I forget their name, the democracy freedom people that came up with the
Foundation for Defense
the foundation, the one of the blockade, brilliant idea.
Led by a guy named Mark Dubowitz, who you can use this. I call him Mark Dubious.
So I don't know if this is true, but it wouldn't be shocking to me if it was his idea to go to Trump to go, hey, why don't you get normalization? Demand normalization from Saudi, Pakistan, and then that way we can declare this deal a good deal. But that was not taken well in Saudi, by the way. That was not the Saudis were not happy about how all that went public, and it was a demand on them, like and Trump, and they owe it to Trump to do that. They were not happy about that, from my understanding. So I think it's not so much the Saudis themselves that are changing, but the Americans and the Israelis being so, like, sort of in your face. Yeah, turn like such a turnoff for the Saudis that they are moving them away from that path of normalization. So I suspect that's where things are going, but you never know. And I don't trust the Saudis, and we'll see how it goes. But where they move in this will determine a lot in the future. But clearly, this idea that being buddies with the U.S. and so close to them will bring you security and economic prosperity is not panning out exactly as they planned it, and they are having to rethink all of those questions.
No, don't trust the Saudis. That's the moral of the story.
Among others.
Yeah.
Maybe not trust the Trump administration.
Yeah.
Which is what the Saudis.
Well, I mean, they are. It's interesting, and I hate to keep bringing everything back to Alberta, but when
it's all about
the government. It's all exactly. Alberta is a metaphor for the world. But it was interesting when the government here legislated the teachers back to work after they'd been on a totally legal strike that they weren't even receiving like strike pay for a few weeks. And they used the notwithstanding clause to do that, right? First time notwithstanding clause ever been used to like break a strike.
It's very, 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 very typical of Canada that it would be.
No. But get this: do you know Danielle Smith was not in the legislature when they introduced that legislation? Do you know where she was en route to?
Florida,
Miami,
Mar-a-Lago.
Good guesses. No, it was Saudi Arabia.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not many labor
in the UAE. I think she did like a Saudi UAE jaunt. It was the Saudis. And when she was in Saudi Arabia, the Saudis flew her on a private jet.
And we're at in Alberta.
Yeah. And it's just interesting because I think a lot of the authoritarianism we're seeing here at home, you can draw a parallel with
they're jealous of the UAE. I think like a lot of Western leaders, like look at the glitz and glamour and investment, and there's
they love Dubai.
They control democracy. Actually, Saudi Arabia is relatively more. It's not a democracy, but there was before Mohammed bin Salman in particular. There was more of a family agreements, right? It was a complex leadership in a way. There was a king, but it was like more of an oligarchy, a little bit like China. Think of it that way. There's definitely the president in China, but there's a lot of actors involved. So it's not like a hard dictatorship, but there's some jealousy there, I think. And actually, we can say there's no dictatorships really hardly anywhere. Stalin and like an exception to the rule, but like I think. Imagine if like
isn't that because he killed everyone else that could challenge him? Yeah,
exactly. So, but
I mean, the Democratic Party in the US. Like, let's leave Uncle Joe out of this.
So, but imagine if like the Democratic Party, it's like the dream, right? Like they have those super delegates and stuff, and they just anoint like Hillary Clinton the leader, or whoever loses, like Kamala Harris or whatever. Like the UAE is the dream. Like you gotta like the accoutrements of a liberal democracy, which is like a bit of freedom to go do like all these raids you see online on ships in the UAE. Like that's freedom, right? And that's the dream, I think. And so like there's a dream here amongst Western leaders, whereas Palestinians, by the way, and this is important to bring up. Going back to it, one of the reasons Palestinians are kind of mistrusted by the Saudis and everybody in the region, they really believe in social democracy.
Yeah.
And they believe in freedom and like humanity.
Yeah. We're viewed as troublemakers. Yeah, we're viewed as troublemakers across the Arab world because we bring ideas about democracy and justice and things like that they don't like. Yeah.
And if you look at it in the West right now, like every social movement has like a Palestinian, probably a woman usually, but a strong Palestinian involved, like dedicating everything to helping people in need. And it's not just Palestinians, like Arabs and Muslims tend to be hit so hard by injustice that there's like this identification right now with supporting justice elsewhere in the world. But Palestinians in particular really are dedicated to a real democracy. And this is like considered like that's why the Egyptians in part would not let people from Gaza into Egypt, not just because of it's really not at all support for Gaza. It's like, oh my God, suddenly we have 2 million people in Egypt who want democracy, who want like equality. That would challenge the regime, the Western-backed regime. Let's add that the UAE Saudi Western-backed regime that most fought the key linchpin to fighting against the Arab democracy movement in 2011, with the coup in 2013, the country that's used that turned Tunisia back into an autocracy in 2024. So the Palestinians, this is one of the reasons, by the way, the Palestinians can't trust Saudis, an absolute monarchy, relatively like a royal family, because they see the Palestinians as a threat, because they want something like what we say that we're promoting around the world whenever we're invading a country like Iran, to give women rights and democracy, blah, blah, blah. But anyways.
Yeah, it's getting late here. Well, it's getting late here in Alberta. It's very late. I think it's bedtime for you, Mr. Wildeman, in Ottawa. I haven't eaten dinner yet, so I gotta go.
Oh my God, man! Go!
Fire off a work email. But this was a lot of fun. Really appreciate learning from both of you. I think your analysis is really great. I think it's great you have a podcast, and I do hope we didn't get too many viewers, but people will listen to it as a podcast after and stuff, and should check out DeCyphered and you guys are just on YouTube now, right? You're not on any of the
for now.
It'll be coming. Yeah. It's coming soon.
For now, you can find us on YouTube. Yeah, subscribe, please. Yeah.
These guys are YouTubers. So subscribe. DeCyphered. To hear lots of great analysis on the situation in the Middle East, because I don't think it's gonna get much better anytime soon.
Nope.
Worse.
But DeCyphered podcast, check it out on YouTube. Thanks so much to all 15 of you who joined us this
From
evening.
Beginning to end. That's pretty impressive.
I know.
Well,
2 hours.
I mean,
it's like a lecture hall. It's like I just came from the Canadian Political Science Association conference. Most of the rooms had 4 people in them.
Oh yeah, I bet. So this is great numbers for I should have gotten a right winger on to argue with you guys.
to lose the argument to him.
I should have gotten I don't know who's Thomas Junot.
Oh God.
But is he right wing?
I know he's like a centrist liberal guy. Yeah,
you could argue against this.
Not a fan. Did get duped by AI recently. You can look that up, which is very funny. Don't get duped by AI, folks. And that's another interesting thing that maybe you should explore on your podcast about, like the Gulf states and their AI investment. I've been reading a lot about that. It's like each Gulf state like has their own like AI company. Like I think Qatar is like down with Anthropic. Saudi is all about Grok. The Emiratis are probably doing Google.
Definitely ChatGPT.
Probably actually.
That would be.
They're on no. The UAE is on MySpace. No, they're on MySpace.
Yeah. All right, guys. Have a good.
Thanks so much, Jeremy, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Talk soon.
See ya.
See you guys.